Okay, we're back again, and this is our Christmas Squatch ornament. This is the last in my ornament set with Swazzle Puppet Studio. Thanks for coming back and learning with me. All right, this time I'm going to be starting off with one of my sponges. Now, I've been using this sponge a lot during this series, and I just got mine at like a dollar store. They're cheap. They are very dense. They have a lot of really small holes in the sponge, so it's easy to use, whereas the other ones that have a lot of holes are very porous. They absorb the paint. It's really hard to work with, and you can't get a nice, smooth, even texture. See how smooth that is? And the more I add to it, kind of the better, because what happens is it kind of makes the holes even smaller and smaller, gives me different textures to work with, so I actually just keep the same sponge. All right, I'm going to start off with my darkest green color. And I'm using my little photo reference, this little one that started it all. And with that photo reference, I'm kind of vibing it and creating the character to look similar. Doesn't mean it'll be the same, it'll just be similar. Now what I do is I'm just going to wipe some of this on here. You can do this a few different ways. Today I'm just gonna go with dabbing it onto my little protective sheet, which is like a little palette. I'm gonna go ahead and brush this on. And while I'm doing this, it's allowing the little lines to stay. Now you can either get your sponge more damp and you can make it go into all those little lines, but I'm gonna keep it as dry as I can so those lines actually show up. I kind of like the textures in the piece. Okay, and as I'm getting closer to the face, I wanna try to avoid it as much as possible, only because I'm using a peach. And the more I paint on it, the harder it's going to be to cover up because this is a really dark color. So I'm just being really careful. And up top is where I'll use a brush. So I'm getting as close as I can. As I start to see it's getting on the face, I'm going to go away from it. And I'm going to get my little round brush, a little less water on it. And I'm going to go really close to the face now with my round brush. The lower it is and less paint on it will keep those lines visible. So I want to try to just take it easy. All right, and I'm going from the point inward. That way I don't have to worry about trying to go the other way. Now this little cone shape right here is going to be the star, and that right there is just going to stay the color it is because we're going to use that. It's going to be a yellow. So there we go. And I'm just dragging it across this way. It's okay if it's pretty dry. Let it dry out. This green is going to soften a lot more. Okay, there we go. Okay, next what I'm going to do is in that same area, even though I have that green, I want to go to my next green. This one is an olive. The first one, I don't know if I told you, but it was sap green. Okay, I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to squeeze a little bit out of the tube. Now, it looks like I have some paint boogers in here. And what that means is I'm going to very carefully take a pair of scissors and I just twist with the sharp edge towards the edge of the brush, and there it is. It cleans it right out. Move your brush just like a nice little safe spot, like on a paper towel, so it dries on. And what I do is I let it dry on my scissors, and once it's dry, I just peel it off. Okay, and I'm gonna add a little ice green to this, just so it warms up that green and is a little less of like a pea green color, like what you'd eat with your peas. And I'm just gonna drag this as is, kind of spread it in different areas because it's a tree. It's gonna have highs and lows, lots of color, no colors, or bright colors and low colors. So all the greens are working together. All right, I'm gonna do a little on the horns and a little bit more on the horns over here. So I'm using the corner of my sponge as it's dry. Tap it off till it's pretty much dry. And since I'm just quickly brushing over it, I don't really care about any getting close to the face. Plus the color is lighter. And I'm gonna go to an even lighter green. This one is Leaf Green by Holben, which makes this acrylic wash. Okay, and I'm gonna tap, 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 tap. I'm gonna use this really bright green only at the top of my horns and only at the top of my horns. Okay, it's gonna get even lighter than that, but just for now, I'm gonna get more of that green and I'm gonna spread the color out a little bit more. Watch where you're putting your hands because you will peel off some of the color, and if you do, that's okay. All right, so now I'm gonna take a split brush. If you don't have one of these, it's okay. Do I even have one of these? I know I brought one over. Let's find it. There it is. Okay, this is a split brush, and that way it looks like little natural hair. The way you lay it down, it kind of keeps the brush split up. So now that I've done all these colors, I'm gonna come back with my darkest green, the sap green. I'm gonna tap off a little bit of this so it starts to look like cool brush strokes. And I'm just going to brush downward, just in a couple spots to add some of that texture back. And though it's starting to look like one color, we're gonna go back and it's gonna get lighter. I'm gonna grab a little bit of my ice green, that turquoise kind of color, and mix it in to see what I can get. Maybe grab some of this. It's fun to mix different colors to make green in all different ways. So this has more of a blue tone to it. It's adding a little bit of that highlight near the little lights. So if you look here, you can see that there's a little bit of brightness around where the lights are gonna be. So I'm just kind of following the lights and adding that highlight into it. There's some lights up here. And the split brush just basically just gently brushes over everything. It doesn't really take over. And I'm gonna use that really bright green again, the leaf green. I'm gonna add that to my whole mixture. And I'm gonna add a few more highlights to the hair, all with my, my split brush. Okay. And this is called a filbert grainer. Filbert grainer. And when we start adding all our other colors in and all the lights, it's really gonna brighten it. Right now we're just giving it a background. Okay, I'm gonna grab one of my like mint greens. This will be for the horns, kind of a softer green. Okay, sorry, that was my stool. Pale lime. Okay, I'm gonna grab some of that light color. Same on my filbert grainer. I'm gonna keep my hand on it so it doesn't go too far, and I'm just dragging it on top of the horns because I don't want the horns to be the same color as the rest of the tree. Those are a bit brighter. This almost distresses it as it's running low on color or on the paint if it's really dry. So you can just keep adding as you go. Now I'm noticing it's taking away some of my line work that shows me like right here in the little grooves. So I want to make sure I go back with a color to fill those little lines in. So I have a tiny, tiny, tiny round brush. Let me tilt my camera just a little. I have a tiny, tiny, tiny little brush. And what I'm going to do is grab my darkest green. All right. I'm going to make sure it's nice and thin and roll my brush. And I'm just going to drag up through those little spots. It's okay if it doesn't land perfectly, just as long as I can fill in a few of those spots that are covered so that lighter green really starts to pop. You notice that? Starting to make those areas up top be even a brighter green. Okay, and we're gonna drag one here. I'm gonna skip where the light is because the light is the Christmas light. It's kind of right there. Doesn't have to be perfect. Keep moving on. If I'm going too fast, you can rewatch. Don't have to worry about that. Okay, now I'm gonna fill in my eye because this one is much smaller than my other ornaments, more detail. So I'm actually gonna do a dark green for the eyes. I'm trying to really stick to the idea of a Christmas tree and the greens. So I'm going around my little bubbles that make the eye look extra sweet and soft. Okay, and again, missing the little raised bubbles, those light pieces of wood, using my tiniest little brush. It's so thin, look how thin that is. And that gives me more control. And the less you press down, the more control you'll have. It'll go in really soft and just the point will start to get into that. Boom. Okay, so there we go. Got those pretty good because these are up higher, so they're easier to color on something so small. These ones are down lower. And if I take a look at my eyes, I can see that I did my eyelash really close to the eye on this side, so those will be little eyelashes going over. All right, while you're letting that dry, make sure you work on something else. I've decided instead of black, excuse me, I'm going to use a navy blue, and that's going to go around this little pretty circle because I'm going to add some glitter and some gold to really make it pop. So the darker your color is in the background, the more the light colors are really going to pop. So it kind of will disappear in the background, if you will. It won't be perfect, but it will disappear with all the extras happening over it. So this is a nice navy blue. It's not black. And I tried to avoid just black color for the fact that it's Christmas, so I'm trying to brighten it up. But it also would have been pretty because it would have looked like, you know, really dark sky at nighttime. So if it's more your jam to do black, then you can do that if you want to do a gold around it. But I felt like gold, I was going to lose my star. So I picked a really dark color that will show golds and glitters as the star is shining bright. Okay, I'm going to kind of move my ribbon around a bit. And there we go. Okay. So there's that. Perfect, perfect. All right, now we can mess with that later a little bit more. We're going to move back to the face. All right, and I'm going to use, now that I think that green is really dry, and the less water I use, the better, I'm going to go to peach. And not a lot of water on my brush, just a teeny bit. Just a teeny bit to keep it moving. I'm going to start filling in the face. And also the less water you have, the more those little lines will show up for the cheeks and everything. So I'm covering up my green. Now, if everything is still really damp, please note that you will start pulling that green into your picture. So you want to let it dry. Same with the eyeballs. Try to avoid the pupils and the areas that maybe your brush touched down with the dark green if it's not dry yet. Okay, because it starts to pull it in and it gets really muddy. But I am going to use my Wand Brilliant. So the first one was Light Apricot. That was the first one I used. And now I'm using Wand Brilliant to add a little bit of a shadow like we've done on some of the other characters. So there's that Wand Brilliant. It's okay if I cover the eyebrow because I'm going to color the eyebrow in. Gonna go this side. Okay, don't be afraid to use a little extra paint. It does dry pretty quick when it's dry paint and you're not adding a lot of water to it. It will start to disappear. I'm gonna put a tiny bit over the bridge of the nose. Just kind of fade it in with a little bit of warmth and color. I'm gonna add a bit of this to the cheeks, just to start. And I'm going to add a tiny bit of a shadow to the bottom of the face. So this is starting to cover up all that green that was pulling into the light apricot color. So that just warmed it up a little. Gave the color back to the character. Okay, now I'm going to start with some green again using my filbert grainer. And what I'm going to do is start working on this because now it's dry. I'm going to grab my light green. I'm not going to mix anything into it. I'm just going to take it exactly as it is. Just loading up my brush with a little bit of water, and I'm just pulling. Just in different areas, but trying to also have like a rhythm to it. If I start here, I want to try to create a line going this way and a line going this way. This is probably the trickiest one because you're trying to add all this color and depth to it, but it can get a little tricky. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little round brush. I'm going to use my pale lime, and I'm going to add a highlight. I'm just going to go whoop and pull straight in. Okay, right across my little horn. And same with this side. Whoop. Okay, there it is. There it is. Okay, going back to the eyes now, I'm going to take my white. Okay, and this is acrylic white, and the reason I use acrylic white is because it's really bold, so easier to use than most other paint mediums. I've tried white as acrylic gouache and it just doesn't show up like those other colors. It doesn't work the same way. So now I'm going on the little circles in the eye for the highlight. If it's too much paint, go and knock some of that off. Knock it off, as I say. And we drag it through the pupils. And if you mess up, you just go back with your green. And if you mess up, you go through it with your eyelashes later. It's totally fine. And then I'm going to add a little bit to the bubble at the bottom of the eyes. Little scoop of white. Little scoop of white. Okay. And you can always go back with green and fix it up if you went into the eyes. It's really tough when they're this small. You may not get it on the first try. All right, I have the little teeth. White, white. Okay. Little teeth are white. And while I have some of this white, I'm just dragging it onto my little highlights again. This looks like there's a little highlight. Okay, I'm gonna go to my really tiny little brush, my little detail brush, my liner, and I'm going to go with my darkest red, which is going to be wine red that I have on my table here. And I'm going to take that little brush and go between the teeth, not on the tongue, skip the tongue. That will be more of a pink color. All right, and I'm just filling in around the teeth with some red. Okay. Now I'm going to take my really light pink here, coral red as I call it, or as it is called, but I call it light pink. All right, we are going to do the nose in this coral red. You can change the color of your nose if you don't like the colors I'm picking. And I'm going to paint a little bit on the tongue, same color. There we go. And I'm going to go to my shading color, and my shading color is going to be Misty Blue. And I'm just going to move this down. I'm going to take Misty Blue and just put it almost where the eyelashes go, just at the top. And that's going to add a little shadow so that when I add that highlight, it's really going to pop and make it really bright. Make it really bright. Oh, okay. And then a little shadow at the top of the teeth. And I'm using a liner brush for this, so I'm getting in there really detailed. I did dry some of my red. So again, let it dry. Let it dry, let it dry, let it dry. Okay, let that dry. I can go over it later. Moving on to my star at the top. Okay, I'm going to do white first because I'm going to be using yellows, and yellow tends to be a little see-through. So first I'm going to take white and fill in my star. If you mess up like I just did and touch down in an area you really didn't want it, you can either go back and fill it all in, or you can wait for it to dry and use your blue to go back around it. I'm basically getting the lines around my star is what's happening. My brush is dipping into it, see? So I can either stop and go back, or I can just fill it all in, or I can just do this. And then with blue, when it's dry, I'll go back over it with blue and avoid the lines. Sometimes you don't know where it's going until you do it. So there you go. So white will make the yellow pop on that. While that's drying, let's grab that warm ice green blue. And I'm using my little map from my little picture over here. And I'm going to see where I put blue. I did 1, 2, 3, 4. Did it on the fourth light. Okay. After the fourth light, 1, 2, 3, I did on the next one. So 1, 2, 3, another 4. All right, and I did it way over here in the corner. I can just see it. You do not have to use the same colors as me. You don't have to do anything where I put it. I'm just trying to make it similar to how I originally painted and using that as my master color chart. 1, 2, 3, here it is on the fourth. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. I do it on every 4 from the first one. And one way over here in the corner you can barely see. All right, now I'm going to grab yellow. Now I know you're like, Eva, but we put white first before we use yellow. Yes, up at the top because there's a lot of dark. But for this one, I think if you squeeze a good amount of paint, okay, you'll be able to just to touch, whoop, like so. 1. We have one kind of right here. 2. 1, 2. 1 here. 3. And then we go down to the bottom. We do 1 here. We do 1 here. So basically I have 2 pinks on each side of the yellow. We did the blue, that would be a pink, this would be a yellow. All right, if it's not bright enough, you can grab a brighter yellow. You can mix some white with the yellow. Okay. Now I'm going to take green, light green, and I'm going to fix the eye up just a little. I'm going to add a little highlight of green into this bubble. Not the top bubble, just this bottom one. That's going to be a little highlight for my eyes. All right, I'm going to take pink, and I'm going to start all the little ones I haven't done on the chest in pink, all the little lights. Going to be this coral red color. It's very mid-century vibes, so I try to stick to the colors I know are really popular from then. Kind of get that feeling. If you mess up, you can always wipe it and then paint over it. Sometimes having your brush straight up is going to be easier with a big glob like this, pressing down, as opposed to pulling and keeping your hand off, because when you do that, what happens is it touches down onto the green. All right, I used really bright whites up here, so that's what I'm going to use again. I'm going to take white and add a bright light, bright light, bright light, boom, boom, on these lights. So I have my colorful lights, and then I just have my regular old bright lights. Alrighty, and I'm going to take a little bit of this green, which is my olive, and add a little bit of olive to the bottom of these. It's not the prettiest color, but they use this color a lot in vintage. So I'm kind of using that as a guide. And then I'm going to take my bright green and add another highlight to the top of this. All right, maybe drag a little bit of my bright green into those. Oh yeah, there you go. My bright green mixed in with olive is actually really pretty. I know I'm kind of covering some of those lines I did earlier. And I think it needs dark green for eyebrows. So I go back to my dark green, and I'm going to add my eyebrow and my eyebrow. I'm going to thicken up my eyebrows just a little bit. Okay. And I feel like this green isn't the prettiest green. It's very dark. So I'm going to take some of my bright green and mix it in with it. And I'm going to use that in the eyes now. So I mixed 2 colors to go back over my eyes. I don't know, I just felt like it was so dark. Okay, we can add some of that. And then on that bubble, I'll add an even brighter green again. You just never know until you're painting it what you want to do to change it. Got a little piece of that. All right, I'm going to take black now. Now, this is going to be the tricky one, you guys. No one said this was going to be easy. All right, I'm going to get some black, put it on my thinnest, smallest liner brush, and I'm rolling back and forth. Tiny bit of water. Make sure no water's running down, because if it does, you'll get a big glob. Okay, I'm going to zoom into my handwork here. I am going to turn my little ornament. I'm going to touch, just touching. I'm not even pulling, just touch. This one I'll pull, and I'm going to go over and let my liner brush do the work. If it finds the little line, it usually follows it. You got to just pull and go a little bit more straight up. Bring it around and close it. And this really breaks up the peach and the white in the eyes. It's kind of giving it another contrast color. Okay, let it drag. The thinner the brush, the better. This is why it's important to have so many brushes in your kits. All right, we're gonna do just a touch, pull, pull, and I'm gonna have to rotate my canvas. I wanna try to match the thickness of my eyelashes. I know it's based off my illustration, which are two completely different lines. So I'm using the brush to kind of shape and make it. I can always go back over with white and the misty blue color that added the little shadow. All right, tricky, tricky. I'm learning it too as I go. I'm not used to painting on things like this. So it's different for me too. Okay, we're learning together. All right, my tooth should be dry, and it is. So we take my white, and I want to go touch up all the white things again. Boom. Little tooth we can touch up. Tooth, touch up. That's one of the hardest things, is waiting for it to dry so I can touch things up. We add that big white dot back. Big white dot. See, it's starting to come back. We got a little highlight for the nose. All right, my cheeks need a little bit of rouge, but I don't want it to match the nose, so I'm just kind of knocking some of that off and adding a little rouge into the cheeks. A little bit watered down, so it adds a little warmth. If there's anywhere you need to touch up with your lighter color, your apricot, or anything a light beige, or peach, you can come back. If maybe you don't want to make it peach, maybe you want to make it a different color. That's okay too. So I'm just dragging and cleaning up with my line brush. I don't want to go too fast. Keep it simple. I can always go back with my other color too around the edges, my Jaune Brilliant. Okay, I'm going to go around the mouth because I can see some of that green was peeking up through. Then we're going to go to the star while this is drying. And remember, we still have gold and glitter to add if you want, so that's really going to take it to another level. I'm going to add a little highlight with my peach into the cheeks with a little kind of scoop shape. A scoop shape. All right, so now it's starting to show up. There we go. All right, now we're going to take yellow. And this one is all deep yellow that I've been using. Same with the ornament. Or the lights. Sorry about that, the lights. So I'm going to color this first before going back around with my blue. Imagine painting cookies all the time. You think about how many mistakes they would make. I would just eat all my mistakes. I'd be like, whoopsie, I have to eat that cookie. I did it wrong. And I would just do that all the time. I think I wouldn't have a job anymore. But who says I'd have to work for anyone? I could just make cookies all my own. All right, I'm gonna bring this down. Now we're gonna touch up all of our blue that I kind of messed up. If you messed up too, it's okay. Messing up is part of the process. All right, I'm gonna get some of this thinned out. Roll my brush around. There's some chunky pieces. I wanna break them down. Okay, and we're going to take our line brush and go opposite now. This is called reverse painting. I'm covering up my mistakes. It's almost like erasing with color. All right, so there we go. I'm just covering these little parts up so that my yellow star really pops. I don't want to go too fast because remember, the more you go quickly, the more mistakes you're going to make, the more covering up you have to do, the more waiting you have to do, and that's just no fun. So I usually do a quick brush to get it started, but then later when I'm cleaning up, I'm like, slow and steady wins the race. You'll get done with less accidents if you go slow. Remember, I'm barely touching my brush down. That's how I have so much control over it. I'm not pushing down really hard. I'm keeping it light as air, keeping it soft. There you go. All right, bringing it this way. Now, if you need to turn your canvas, you can. Don't be afraid to turn it, tilt it, do whatever you have to do to make sure the job gets done right, okay? There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to be using golden glitter to really kind of mask all that blue in the background. All right. I'm going to use my really bright green. I'm going to use this one that's almost like a white, the pale lime, and I'm going to add those highlights back to my green. Ooh, there's one. Ooh, there's two. There we go. There it is. And it's okay if you go outside the lines if it helps make something look good. I'm going to add some little dots in here, just for different points of interest. Kind of take away from any little mistakes. Little dots. Little dots in my horns. Just kind of make it really busy. All right, I'm going to add some little dots around here. Yes, I'm going to have glitter, but it doesn't hurt to add some little specks for the highlights. Maybe these are little mini lights going around the lights that you have already. Okay, dot, 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 dot. You don't need a lot. Dot, dot, you don't need a lot. There we go. Little mini dots. So see, it's giving it some activity on there. It's making it look busy. When really, all we're doing is adding little tiny dots to distract. Okay, and the last thing I'm gonna do to the green, then I'll move up to the star area and then I'll be done, is I'm gonna take my really dark green and I'm just gonna add dark green under the arm lines to add a shadow. Under the arm lines, shadow. Okay. Then under the chin, this adds a nice shadow. All right. Under the hair, which I'm going to add some bright over this, just kind of needed to dry so I could see where I'm missing anything. And a little bit on this side of dark green where it touches the horns, because we want to see the difference where the horns pop out, okay? So dark green is okay in these areas. Then I'm going to add a little bit under the lights, just a little touch, so it looks like a little shadow is hitting it. Okay, it kind of makes it pop a little bit. And you can always touch up the lights if you mess up and paint on them. A little liner brush is helpful. My paint is really drying out, so like that's what's making it look a little distressed. And then I'm just adding a little bit of dark pulling up. And you'll see my little signature at the bottom. Thanks, Swazzle, for adding that. Signatures of artists is so important. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with that. And now we do reverse. We do the highlights. So I'm going to grab my really bright green, roll my brush around, and I add the highlights not underneath, but on top. So there we go. This arm is starting to get more highlights. This one's going to get some highlights just to the top of things. Okay, more to the middle, to the top of this. There's a lot of back and forth, but it does work when it gets all done. And the top hair tufts, we need to see those better. So we add a little highlight in there. I'm gonna start at the top of that point. Whoop. See? And it just adds that nice little pop of highlight and color. There we go. Could add a little here just to brighten this just a bit. Okay, I'm seeing a little muddiness, so I'm gonna go back and touch up some little areas while that dries. Everyone's will dry differently depending on what you've done. I'm gonna add a little more rouge. Uh-oh. Add a little more rouge. Maybe I'm gonna add a little bit more red to the nose, just a touch of red. Okay, I'm starting to notice like it's blending in. So I'm gonna grab my wine red and I'm just gonna add a little bit of red to the nose. A little watered down will make it start to show up better. There we go. Now I'm gonna add the highlights to the eyes again in white, because now my green is pretty good. I'm going around the pupil now. So right here, see how that really brightens? Okay, it shows the shadow at the top, and just right here, right along this edge, anywhere you think you need it, go for it. And a highlight to the nose again. There's that. Okay, now the star. I'm going to use gold because it's already yellow. So now I can take my gold and come back. Sorry, I have a little stuff on top. Okay, I'm using my line brush. I'm following where my star ended up. So now I know exactly where to paint and touch my brush. I shouldn't go any farther than that. Go nice and slow. Make sure the gold gets on there nice and evenly. Whoop. And I'm going to pull down right here on this little cone that is the top of the star. Sit on his head. There we go. Now with the gold, I'm also going to do a little bit where the lights are running, as like, I'm going to tap off a little bit of this gold and I'm going to run it like the lights are moving. So it's almost like the strand for the lights to be touching. There we go. And thinning out your gold is better for this part because you want it to look thin. You don't want big chunky pieces of gold. Maybe you do, but I want thin pieces. All right, so if we take a look at that, we can start to see my gold is showing up in all those little spots. And I'm going to add a little bit to the ear because there's a windy part for the lights. And it's okay if it starts to kind of look a little messy on the horns because we're going to add those lines back to the horns. I'm going to go back with my dark green and I'm going to add lines all the way. See, it's going to clean it up again. I just kind of went over those when I was adding all my different greens. And a nice solid line. And this is with my liner brush. Solid line, and solid line. Maybe a little dark green at the top of the eyes. Just to the top of the pupils. I feel like this one has a green outline. Like a dark green outline. I'm going to try to do the same over here. There we go. Okay, now the eyes look they're a little wonky. It's okay. He's cute. Got some wonky eyes. Told you, hardest one here. Save the hardest for last, okay? All right, now I'm taking my Filbert split brush. I'm grabbing a little bit of gold. Just a little on my brush, nothing crazy. All right, and I'm just going to pull some little lines coming out from it, all circular, moving around. See how I'm changing where my brush position is? I don't keep it the exact same. And what this is going to do is make it look like it's bright all the way around in that perfect circle. If you stay the same for everything, it's not going to look like it's really 3D and happening. That's why it's important to move it all around. All the different angles, and a little gold goes a long way. So let's take a look. And don't worry, we're going to add glitter too. So I'm getting all those lines from my gold, and now I'm going to add some thicker lines. Okay, so I'm going to add like a couple really big. I don't do it like in specific spots. I'm just picking a couple places to add more brightness. It's going to go over the hair a little bit because the light is shining so bright. It's kind of going past his hair. Just a few places. You don't have to go everywhere with lines. Less is more. Okay, so we're getting that little beam of light. Now I get to choose where do I want to put glitter. So I grab a brush I don't care too much about. Let me see. Where's the brush I don't care too much about? This one. Because it's an old brush, and I keep all my old brushes for things like this. I'm taking a round brush and going into my tacky glue. Okay, tacky glue. And I'm adding glue wherever I think. A little bit of water is okay. You can even tap it off on the side. Wherever I think I want to add glitter. I'm going to add glitter in their own lines too. I'm going to try to kind of splash it up here. Then I want some glue, and if it's starting to dry really fast, then make sure you sprinkle your glitter on quickly. I'm okay if it starts to dry because I don't want it to stick everywhere like as much as I'm putting it on there. I just want it to stick kind of lightly. So I'm going to put my little one in the tray. I'm not going to face it down because then it'll stick to everything. I just want to sprinkle it in the places I want. It's like salting it. It could be like the pizza guy where he holds his arm all weird and sprinkles it. The really famous guy now. Okay, and we're just sprinkling our little Christmas tree cookie. Not really a cookie, but you know. It looks like one. Okay, now I have my little duster. I'm just going to kind of press down and make sure it's sticking to my glitter, or my glue, not my glitter to my glue. I'm going to tap it. Not too crazy, glitter gets everywhere. And if you need safe glitter, you can always use Mama Clown glitter, which you can get through sillyfarm.com, and that way that glitter will not cut your eyes, especially for our little ones doing these projects. And there's our little character. Whatever you want to add to it, you can. I'm just going to get the glitter off my hands. I'm gonna add a little bit of white to the cheeks. I'm going to make a little doop and a little doop and maybe some little dots of white around the top of my tree or up around my light. That way it looks like little dots of light are coming up along with my glitter, but it softens again that background that is really dark. And I found one little spot I want to fix. You'll find things on yours you might want to spruce up. Make sure it looks good. And we're just going to add a little bit more here. This is just my darker peach, my One Brilliant. Or Jaune Brilliant. I always call it One Brilliant, but it's Jaune Brilliant. Okay, and a little bit here, and a little bit here, and there you have it. Your own little squatch. Now make sure you sign the back of your ornaments, and there it is. Look at all that magical color. I love it. I think it's awesome, and I can't wait for this one to find the perfect home. So you can sign the back now. I'm going to kick mine off. You can do your first letter of each of your names. I do Eva, Lacey, E-L. I have my new signature going into the new year, 21. So we always know when I made it. And 1 of 1 means that it's the only one that looks like this. All right, just like us, we should be stamped with a little 1 of 1. All right, there you go, my friends. Happy holidays, and I'm wishing you all the best.